What is up? Welcome back to Project Freelance. How's it going, guys? My name is Kay Anagonio. I am your host here on this podcast all about freelancing. Whether you are a photographer, a videographer, if you do something different, maybe you're a construction worker, maybe you're a freelance contractor, maybe you're like our guest and you are a performing artist, this podcast is for you. If you haven't heard my voice, like I said, I'm Kay Anagonio. Thank you for tuning in this week on Project Freelance. Let's get started. So this week on Project Freelance, I am joined by a guy named Mikeyridesthefire, and he is also known as Mikeyridesthefire on Instagram. He is a fire spinner, he is a flow artist, and I wanted to bring him on Project Freelance to share his story with you guys about how he got started as a flow artist, how he got started spinning fire, what he's doing now, where he wants to go, and he also wants to give back in the form of education, and I think that is super cool. But before we get started, if you're new to the podcast, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a notification. We have new episodes coming out every single Monday at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, just in time for your Monday morning commute to your gig, your work, wherever you're going. This podcast comes to you every Monday, 7 a.m. PST. Don't miss it. Hit the subscribe button. And if you guys like what you hear during this episode, please leave a rating and some feedback. Other people want to know what you think of this podcast. When you look up podcasts, what's the first thing you do? You scroll down and you see the ratings. Does it have 5 stars? Is it under 5 stars? If it's under 3 stars, you're probably not going to listen to that podcast. But guess what? We're sitting at a 5-star rating, baby. And if you give us a rating and some feedback, I'm actually going to send you a signed photography print. Yes, just for you. I will sign one of my photos and I will send it to your house, to your office, or to your school, wherever you are at. I will send you a signed photo print. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. Also, if you guys need any gear, photography, videography gear, or, there's just a bunch of things down in the description, a new backpack. There's a lot of links down there that I think will help you out. And it's also tax season. So if you need help with your taxes, or if you want to start getting your expenses in order, there are some links down in the description that will help you out as well. Thank you guys so much for listening to Project Freelance. Let's get into this episode with Mikeyridesthefire. Mikey, please introduce yourself and what it is you do to the Project Freelance audience.
So my name is Mikeyridesthefire. I'm from Los Angeles, California, born and raised. I'm 24 years old, and I'm currently studying mechanical engineering. But as far as freelancing goes, I am a freelance fire performer. I have been practicing spinning fire and flow arts for about almost 5 years now. I've been performing for about the last 2.5, 3 years now. And I've recently started teaching as well over the last about 2 years. And in the last about 2 years or so, I've started to get into a few other different kinds of fire performances. I've been doing some fire play kink performances as well as some more burlesque fire performances as well, with kind of my own spin on it. So that's pretty much as far as my freelancing goes.
So let's go back and talk about how you got into performing in the first place, not necessarily with fire, but just where you got your start as a performer.
So I had been spinning fire because I got my start as a performer pretty much as spinning fire. I wasn't too interested in spinning LEDs. And so about a year or 2 years after I started spinning fire, I started getting requested to perform at like events and gigs, and people would have me come out and stuff. So I never really thought about performing when I first started spinning fire. When I first started spinning, it was more just like an outlet, something really cool and fun, and just like something like push the boundaries. So when I started performing, it kind of just like happened out of the blue. Like people just started asking me, and they really liked my flow and wanted me, to come up and be at their events. So it was never really planned, and that's what I always kind of tell people is they're like, how'd you get into this? Like, how'd this happen? And I just kind of like fell into it, to be totally honest.
So did you like see fire performers before you started doing fire spinning, or did you just like pick it up? Like, how did you find out about the art in the first place?
So my two examples of when I tell people of when I've seen spinning fire is from Lilo and Stitch when I was younger. I loved Lilo and Stitch growing up. That was like the coolest. I was like, oh, they're spinning fire. And I always knew that there was like some background in like Polynesian cultures and stuff like that with fire spinning. And then so I started going to festivals in about 2015, and I had seen flow artists, but I hadn't really seen any fire performers before. And so I was at this event called Cosmic Carnival, and I remember watching this one gentleman who's actually my friend name. His name is Gregory. He goes by G Style, and he was spinning poi up on stage, and I was just so mesmerized, and it was just so cool, and I just like never really seen anything like it. And so that was like my first kind of instance, like personally, that I saw. And so after that, I like kind of picked up like LEDs and some things along the ways, and just like played with my friends' props and stuff like that, but never really got into it until about probably like 4 or 5 months later. And when I really got into it, it wasn't really because anything happened. It was more of just like someone came up to me with the fire staff, and I asked them about it, and he kind of like introduced me and like gave me the the info to get like my own staff and stuff like that. And so those were like my first couple instances with fire, and then ever since then I've just been kind of fell in love with it.
Fire is a very interesting element to play with. Why did you choose that over, say, LEDs? Like, what was it about spinning fire? What was it about fire in general that really attracted you to it?
So with fire specifically, there's just like this very primal feel, and I remember the first time lighting up, just like feeling pretty much pure joy, and it was nothing like I had experienced before, because it's almost like you're controlling the fire in a way. And so like that kind of power and control is just something that like is not really something you ever have, especially with something as untamable as fire. Not only the primal feel of fire, but just like the feeling when you spin fire is just like so like I said, just something you can't really explain. And the difference between LEDs and fire really is there's not too much of a difference, at least when it comes to visually, because LEDs can be really pretty and almost be more visually pleasing than fire in essence, depending on what you're going for. But the feeling of spinning fire is just like, I can't really even explain it. I was at an event the other night spinning LEDs, and it was fun, and they asked me to get up on stage, and I had a good time. But just like even the feeling I get after I spin LEDs compared to fire, it's just like it doesn't feel as smooth, it doesn't feel as clean, like it just doesn't feel the same. And so I really think it has to do with kind of that ability to like control the fire, as well as like just kind of going back into like your primal instincts of being around fire. Because not that LEDs aren't amazing, but they are like a newer technology where fire is like ancient, you know?
Yeah, definitely. So when you first started getting asked to do these events, what were you charging as your rate? Like, how did you figure out your worth is basically my question. Like, how did you figure out your value? Did it come right at the beginning, or did it take you time to find your optimal rate for these performances?
It definitely changed over time. When I first started spinning, I was just stoked that somebody would have me out. And, as I've noticed, and this is just kind of how it goes, is you start going out for free, and then you start noticing like what you're worth and what other people are charging, and then you like start going from there. So it really depends on the event and what's going, or like what specifically is needed. Because if they only need, a 3-minute set, one like a 3-minute burn or something like that, and they just need someone to come out and do it safely, like my minimum now is 300. But back when I like first started spinning, like I would do that for pretty much any amount of money, just to like get that experience and like know what it was like. And now as I've like grown, it's kind of the standard in LA and a lot of places, especially the busier markets, is the minimum is like 200 for just coming out, and that will include whatever, or 250 will include whatever that performer like indicates in their price, because everyone has different packages. Like someone's $250 package is going to be different than the next person's. So it really just depends. And as far as getting there, it was just a lot of trial and error, and then talking to different friends and talking to different performers. There's been a lot of really good resources out there as far as my friends have given me, as well as just other performers just being really awesome and transparent about things. Because the thing about it is, since it's a freelancing community of fire performers, they want it to almost be unionized, where everyone's charging the same rate so that no one's being undercut, because you never want to get booked a gig and you're like, $500 for me to come out or whatever it is, and then someone else is like, I'll come out for $100, and then they just book that person and then leave you in the dust, because that doesn't really help anyone, because that person who charged $100 should be charging at least $300 or whatever.
We see that same problem a lot in, freelance videography, which is what I do full time. And we see, some people are charging $500 for a day rate. Some people are charging $75 for a day rate. So there's a lot of, Facebook groups and things for getting gigs, and there's different resources out there for us. But sometimes the people, like the clients hiring the freelancer, they don't understand the value of what they're getting. Can you just talk about the value of what people get for a package, like a $300 package or a $500 package? Like, what is the difference in the value that you're getting for investing more into your performer that you're bringing out?
So what I think is probably the most important thing is the professionalism of the overall performer. And that's not to say that somebody who's charging less won't necessarily be more professional, but those people charging more will usually offer more in terms of professionalism. And I think that just goes a long way, because when it comes to spinning fire and performing, it's not just about spinning fire and performing. It's a lot more than that. It's about how you're interacting with your client. It's about how you're dressing up. It's your costuming. There's a lot more to it. And so those people who are, who have their rates like dialed in and know like what their packages are, you're going to get like an overall better performance. Because if we're being honest, like there's not, and I'm sure you run into this with videography as well, like there's not much, you can't tell much between like someone who's good at what they do and someone who's amazing at what they do. Like there's not a whole lot of difference there, especially if you only want a certain thing. If they only want like fire performers in the background for aesthetics, that's fine. They don't really need to worry about like who has a lot of skill and the most experience and things like that. And so when it comes to, and then when you come to like different prices and packaging, that usually comes to like how many, like what kind of props you're using and how many burns you want in the hour and things like that. So like overall, it's just like there's a lot of things that can play into it, because somebody who's charging less won't have the budget for all these other things that are in like a professional performer's budget. And not only that, as a professional performer, we'll definitely have fire insurance, a safety, and all the right safety equipment. So it's just an overall safer experience in general, as opposed to hiring somebody who's less. Because if you do hire somebody who doesn't have insurance and then something does happen at your event, they would be held liable, or you would be held liable, and that's good, because I believe my insurance is covered up to $1 million or $10 million liability damage. I'm not sure, but it's something amazing. So if anything does happen, like I'm covered, and the event that I'm at is also covered. So that's, I think, is like a really key thing that a lot of people don't ask about. And I don't think for most private events that I've been booked for, they never ask me about, because it's not necessarily like a law or a regulation. And that's where like a lot of these issues kind of come into play, is because since there's no regulations, that people can just kind of run wild and then charge whatever they want, because there's nobody being like, oh, you need these certain things and to be, any certification.
Yeah. So it's super interesting, like that, like you said, there's very little regulations when it comes to this stuff, but good on you for having that insurance. I'm sure there's fire performers out there that don't have insurance and are just trying to like wing it and hope for the best. And it's kind of the same in my field. I'm also a certified drone pilot, and I had to get a certification. I had to do training for it. There are all these things I had to do in order to fly legally, because they did finally put in regulations for that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting to hear that perspective and that aspect of what you do. So yeah, fire performers out there that are listening to this, make sure you guys have insurance, because God forbid you burn the place down.
Yeah, and I think that it comes across in most industries, I think, as well, because I'm also a certified massage therapist. And it's kind of like, that's what I was like brought into school being told, is pretty much like, you guys are going to be charging $80, $100 an hour. And there's people going to be like, oh, but there's a place down the block from me that's $40 an hour or something like that. And on the same rate, it's on that same level. It's like the difference in training you're getting and the quality of work you're getting is much different. So on that same level, like with fire performers, you just get like the quality of work you get with somebody who has like their rates dialed in, rather than somebody who's just trying to make a quick buck, is something different. And obviously, I've worked with people that I know closely with their budget. Like I say $300 is my minimum, and that's what I come out to. But it's like, when there's like a cause that I really enjoy, or there's like a community that I really want to come support, I like kind of like give and take on some things. And the other thing is nice is that you can write those off as like charitable donations, because you're just donating your time to the event. So it's like, it's kind of nice. But just the sheer amount of people that I see who just like don't really care of what they're getting, like, as opposed to just being like, I want fire, like it doesn't matter how it happens, like just make it happen. And I think that's really the problem, because like at the end of the day, I don't think that the artist who is like, I need $75, I'm going to take this gig, is the person who is like in the wrong. I think the issue really lies with like the person booking them and being like, hey, do you have proper insurance? Is the safety going to come out? Do you have all these protocols? Because it's really on the event planner to do that, not really like the person that's being hired to like make sure make sure everything's like run and set and stuff like that, So it's an interesting conversation, especially with fire performers, because a lot of people are very like, you have to charge this much, and some people are like, charge whatever you want, so I'm sure you have that in your industry as well. So a lot of people are like trying to make things very stable, and then other people are just like don't really care as much about it. So it's kind of difficult.
Yeah, and I love talking about, the more difficult things in freelancing, because I feel like people need to hear this kind of stuff. I think it's super important that we do talk about this. So thank you for sharing that. Let's switch gears and talk about how I came to know you, which was at a photography meet. Can you talk about going to your first photography meet and getting photos taken in that kind of setting?
Yeah. So I can't even. My first photography meet was so long ago, and I first came with the attitude, and this was a terrible attitude to have coming into it. Was, I'm just gonna spin fire and flow, and if people get my picture, they'll get my picture. And while that's a great concept to have if you just want action shots, because action shots are great, you're not going to get a lot of engagement from the photographers, and you're not going to get a lot of really good photos, because most people aren't trained in shooting fire. So some people are, and some people aren't. Don't get me wrong, I've met some incredibly talented photographers from some of the photo meetups here in Los Angeles. But it really just depends, and it's hard to like learn on the fly, especially something like that. So my first meet, I remember getting a few photos back and being like, okay, I should probably, interact with the photographers a little bit more, pose more, and then also get an outfit dialed in, because I remember the outfit I had, I just like threw on whatever, and I didn't realize the level that people went to at TFTI as far as their costuming and makeup and all that. So going from my first TFTI onward, it just kind of like was a slowly like uphill to like find like my plateau of what I really enjoyed to do as like a a performer at the photographer meets, because it's much different when you're like working with a single photographer than it is to perform for a bunch of photographers all at once who are going to be taking your picture. But it was just honestly a really cool experience, and I met a lot of really extremely talented individuals and collaborated with a lot of people as far as models and other photographers, and got some of the best work I've ever seen, honestly, from those meets, and met some of the most talented photographers I know. So it's just a really cool place to network and like get to know people, and also just collaborate on really awesome work.
On that note, can you talk about the importance of social media and the role that plays in your line of work? I'm sure you get a lot of client requests through Instagram and things like that. So can you just talk about the importance of social media?
Yeah, so a big part of the freelance game is social media, because that's like almost like your live portfolio, and it's been interesting for me because I can definitely see that having a good like social media platform and having it visually pleasing and putting out good content that's like that's consistent and that has good quality and stuff like that, like it really does the work. Like I remember when I was really trying to grow my Instagram following, I kind of just plateaued a little bit, just also because I'm in school and just kind of taking a break. But it's just really interesting to see like how the level of interaction you'll get from what you post. And not only that, but like how many people have hit me up to either like learn or hire me for their event, or like add me their performance roster or whatever. So it's not only like that clients reach out, but it's also a great way to network with other fire spinners and flow artists, another way to learn. And like, so like social media is just so important in so many different ways. And it's also like a double-edged sword, because it's so easy to get sucked in and spend all your time on it. So it's hard to like have that moderation. And there's a really good meme that floats around that's like, I contemplate deleting my social media every day, but then I realize this is also a major source of income because I'm a freelance artist. So it's like this give and take of like, oh, I don't want to be on here, but at the same time, this is also very, very helpful to what I'm doing. So yeah, it's really interesting. But overall, so long as it's used right, I feel like social media could be a great tool for anyone, not just freelance artists.
Absolutely. And if you're not already, I highly recommend that you get on TikTok, because I think your content would absolutely just destroy TikTok.
Yeah, I made one and I've been thinking about it, but then I also found out that it's owned by the Chinese government. And at the same time, how much do I care? Because the government's like listening to everything I'm doing anyway. So like, does it really matter? But so I'm on the fence about it right now. But I do have it on my phone already. So the Chinese government's probably on it.
They're already
so
you already have the coronavirus. Okay. You already have it.
It's exactly.
When did you start teaching? Like what made you want to start doing that, giving back in that way, in the way of education?
So it kind of happened like kind of organically as well, where I didn't really plan on teaching, but as like time went on and more people taught me, I was like, okay, like this is something that like would be a good idea to like give back to the community, as well as like anyone else who wants to learn. Because like not only do I want to like teach other like friends and things like that, like different tricks and have skill shares and things like that, but it's also like a really good tool just in general for like meditation and mental health and relaxation and just like a abundance of things. Because like when you get into this flow state, like it's just, there's a lot of research on it. I haven't done too much research on it. I'm just going to talk about it straight from experience. But it's just like this feeling where I have a lot of voices like going on all the time, just like talking about different things, just like always ideas in my head, and sometimes like they don't shut up, sometimes they do. But when I'm spinning something, it's just, there's just one voice and it's just like very calm and it's like, natural. And I've learned more recently, especially because not everyone has like that group of voices in their head that can help like dictate things. Some people don't have a voice in their head at all. So like I can only like attribute it to like being in like such a relaxed mental state that like you don't have to think about what's coming next, because that's what it feels like. Even though there's that one thought in my head, everything just feels very fluid and just feels like a flow. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
And so can you repeat the question one more time? Sorry.
Yeah, just why you wanted to start teaching and what got you into that.
Yeah. So with that, like being said on the whole like mental health aspect of it, it's like helped me a lot, gain a lot of clarity. I actually grew up in the foster care system in Los Angeles, which was not the best situation ever. And I really wish that I had flow arts and fire spinning before, because I really feel like it could have helped a lot of things growing up, especially having a positive outlet as a young adult. So that's something that like has always been interested in me, and is wanting to like give back to different communities. This is not only just like giving back to the flow arts community, but just giving back to people who I feel like it would really benefit, whoever that may be. And there's been a lot of people who've come up to me and asked, and who are just really interested about it. And I think that there's not a lot, it's not very mainstream, so there's not a lot of people like, there's not a lot of people teaching, and it's not like there's not a lot of knowledge widely known or just available, unless you know what to look for. So I really like spreading that, because the positive effects that like fire spinning and flow arts can have on someone is just like so great, and I feel like that should be taught to everyone. So that's like kind of been a motivation for me to like teach people, especially when somebody's like, oh, I've never spun before and I'd like to learn or whatever. Like I've always like to like get people information and, you know, point someone in the right direction and make sure they have the right safety information and all that good stuff. So yeah, it's just been it's been a really good way to like give back to a community that's given back so much to me, and I feel like that I can give like back further than just the flow arts community, especially with like outreaching to other people. And like I've had thoughts about reaching out to my old foster care agency about holding workshops and things like that for like current foster youth and things like that. Just with school, it gets kind of difficult. So it's teaching for me, at least, has just kind of like come naturally, and now it's just something that I'd really like to just share my knowledge with anyone who wants to listen.
Wow, man. I love that you want to give back, and I love that you're, you know, thinking about reaching out to your old foster care agency. I think that that's a fantastic idea, especially because you grew up in the foster care system. You know what it was like, and you know what those kids go through on a daily basis. And I think that getting involved in that community again would be not only good for them, but it would also be good for you, you know, mentally. I think that it would be something really great for you to be involved in that.
Yeah, exactly. I think it'd be really rewarding, and it's like something that I also want to reach out to like schools and stuff like that, because like not only are kids who are in foster care who are suffering, but like I knew plenty of kids growing up who were also suffering too, and they didn't have the benefit of having like a social worker to make sure that everything was okay. And it's like, not to say that my social workers were great, because they really weren't, but it's like, you know, having, as much as weird as it is, like, and there was a lot of, you know, bad things that happened in foster care, I also had a lot of support in like odd ways that some people didn't, even though they still had their families, you know. So it's like I'd like to like start, as far as like even reach out further to like, you know, schools and things like that, to just like be able to have kids have like that positive outlet, because I feel like a lot of people don't like doing certain things because they're not good at sports, or like they're not good at certain, or like whatever. And it's like flow arts is something where it's like you can be good at it. You just have to practice, and it's not even about being good. It's just about having fun.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And, you know, I wish the best of luck to you. And if there's anything that I can do to help facilitate any of that stuff, please definitely let me know. So let's talk about some of the more, I guess, not so traditional events you do. I mean, you do burlesque, you do these different kinds of things, fire play king, that kind of stuff. Can you just talk about those more out of the box kind of things and what you love about doing those?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been interested in like kink and BDSM since I was like, 18, 19. And I had known that there was like fire play and fleshing and things like that in kink, but I hadn't ever thought to do it with the performance. And so I guess the burlesque kind of came first, and I started performing with a group called Femdom Fatale. It was a group of people who did burlesque and pole and grinder and a little bit of fire and a bunch of other things at Bar Sinister. And so the person who ran the show, Bella, reached out to me and asked me to come out for one of their shows. I was like, yeah, that sounds great. I found out that I was the only dude on their roster. So when I found that out, and I found out there was just like a bunch of other really sexy people on their roster doing things like getting naked, burlesque, grinding, and all that, I was like, all right, well, I gotta like step it up over here. I can't just spin fire while they're like being all hot and stuff. So I kind of just put the idea really quickly together to spin fire, and while I was spinning fire, to take off like articles of clothing. Because like with burlesque, it's one thing where you like design a routine where you take off your clothes and you have multiple pieces on and all that jazz. My pieces are a little bit different because the clothing isn't really like a snap off, or like I use regular clothing, and so I like to utilize like the skill aspect of like taking off like actual clothing while I'm spinning, because not that there's not real skill in burlesque, because I think it's incredible. But I also think it's a lot different when you have like two-handed props and you're also taking off your clothes while you're not stopping or you're not dropping your props and things like that. So I really got it. So I kind of just threw that idea together in my head, and it just kind of worked out really well on the first show. And I just kind of like started evolving that and playing with that more. And actually, after the first show at Bar Sinister that I did, I met a woman named Zena, who is actually my partner, whom I've done a lot of the fireplay performances with at Bar Sinister. And we met at Bar Sinister and really hit it off and got along. And then she shortly after joined the crew a few months later, and we decided to design a routine that involved fire and domination, as well as bondage. And so that was like our first like as well as a few other things, but that was like our first like kind of realm for what we wanted to do. And the theme for the show was Pulp Fiction. So it was Quentin Tarantino specifically. So, but we decided to do the scene from Pulp Fiction where Samuel L. Jackson is yelling, "Say what again?" right before he shoots the guy in his apartment. Very iconic scene. And so I was essentially Samuel L. Jackson, and Xena was the person who gets shot. And instead of getting shot, she gets stomped for like the next 5 minutes. And so that's kind of like how that idea happened. And then we just like the next idea, like the next theme we had, we would just like kind of go with that and then figure out an idea with that. So it kind of just like a lot of these things just kind of like happened organically and just kind of like fell into place. Because Xena originally wanted to do one set with me and one set by herself, because she was a little nervous about performing at Bar Sinister, and she really wanted to like do a set, just kind of have like an entryway in. And I actually helped her with the other set just to like make her feel a little bit more comfortable. But since it went over so well, we decided to just like keep doing sets together pretty much. And that was like the overall goal, but we just didn't expect it to go over so well. Like my most viewed videos on Instagram is the IGTV video of that entire performance, and then the other video, which is just a minute long, and I think they're like 20,000 views each, and I have like 3,000 followers. So it's like pretty crazy to scratch. Yeah, exactly. So I don't really know what happened, but so those videos do really well, and like I really want to get back into those performances. There's just not a lot of venues that have fire and have an interest for things like that, so it's just hard finding clientele. But yeah, as far as getting into it, it kind of just like all just like everything in my life, like kink, fire, and then like a performance partner, all just kind of smashed all together and just worked out really well.
That's amazing, man. And it's so rare to hear something like that. So I'm super stoked for you and everything that you're doing. So talk about some of the bigger events that you've done, festivals, things like that. And what are some of your favorite ones that you've done? And what are some that you would want to do in the future?
So as far as the bigger events that I've done, and I've done a lot of events on the West Coast. I've done a lot of small festivals. I've done some bigger ones too, but the bigger ones consist of Lightning in a Bottle, Burning Man. Did Lightning in a Bottle a few years. Serenity Gather, Lucidity, and then Desert Hearts, 2 years. So my favorites at least on the West Coast to perform at was probably Desert Hearts, and Lightning in a Bottle. Lightning in a Bottle just because the spaces are so intimate, which is really fun because I really enjoy crowd interaction, which is the same with Desert Hearts. So those events are really fun, and I really enjoy spinning there. Desert Hearts is actually on my birthday this year, so I think I'm just going to attend for fun. I'll be back at Lucidity this year. I think I'll be on tour during LIB this year, so I don't think I'll be there. It's up in the air, though. I'm really not sure. And then performing at Burning Man is just like a whole other experience. You perform because specifically I perform in the Great Circle. Like I go out and spin fire all night, every night at different fire circles and stuff, but when people talk about performing at Burning Man, that's usually what they're talking about. And it's pretty much they have about, I think it's like 25 or 30 fire groups that line the perimeter of the man they're going to burn. And before the fireworks show and the explosions and everything to light them up, these 20, 30 groups all do choreographed pieces that are last 15 to 20 minutes long. Yeah, so it's like a really amazing experience, and it's really awesome, and it's really cool, especially to like be with like a group of your friends and all that. So it's like a really, it's a really dope experience, and I definitely recommend it. It's not, at least going to Burning Man, I definitely recommend. As far as performing, obviously that's not everyone's game, but it's just a really incredible experience, especially because since the fire community is so small, like of those 30 other groups, like there's a good chance you're going to know a lot of other people, which is really cool. So it's just like you and all your friends spinning fire around the man, which is really rad. And then as I've been at Sonic Bloom the last 2 years, and I've taught there and I've performed there, and that's actually in Colorado. And that's one of my favorite events just because it's just so fun. They take really good care of their artists. The music's really good. The campsite that it's on is amazing. So it's just like, it's really beautiful and just an amazing event. I definitely really enjoyed that, but it's a little bit further out in Colorado.
And then what are some that you want to do that you haven't done yet? Like what are some of your like ideal events that you'd love to perform at?
Honestly, at this point, there's not too many off the top of my head. Oops, excuse me. I've like done all the major ones that I've like really wanted to do. I've been like really proud about that. But my favorite thing is just really like performing for like smaller crowds, and like that's really where I excel. Like Sonic Bloom's really great, but they have you on two little platforms on either side of the stage. And unless you're on either sides or you're like specifically watching for fire performers, you know, there's a chance you're going to miss it and things like that. So like I love performing at festivals, but it's just different than like performing at like a little club or somebody that's just booking a 15-minute performance for their entire party or something like that, you know. So yeah, off the top of my head, it's not really any events that I want to perform at. It's more of like what I want to like do next. I'd love to work with like musical artists and like come up with collaborations as far as like music and fire and visual effects and things like that. Like that's something I'm really interested in. Yeah, and the thing about it is honestly I've kind of shifted my focus towards school this year just because things are just getting a little bit more intense. Um, so I haven't been as like eager to go out and perform at festivals and things like that. But it really just depends on the event. I'd love to perform at anywhere that would give flow artists like more what's the word? Just like more reach, because I feel like more people should see it and be able to showcase it and not just be like a sideshow act.
Yeah, definitely. And who are some of the performers that you look up to in the industry?
Oh God, there's so many. I mean, like most of my friends, I know that's very, very vague. But just some people to name off the top of my head. Stephen Holmes is one of them. He's like one of my longtime inspirations, and he's a really good friend of mine. Uh, Jordan Nielsen. I don't know how to say his last name. He's gonna hate me, but he's Dirt Pepper on Instagram, and he's also one of my inspirations. He's incredible and also a really good friend of mine. And of course, I'm just blanking on all the names of all my friends right now. Uh, uh, Another fellow named Paul Galano who lives in New York. He's been spinning contact staff for a really long time. I've met him a few times. He's a really nice dude, just an incredible performer, or an incredible staff spinner and performer.
What is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started all this?
Oh God, it's a good question. Hmm. Never thought about that. What's something I wish I knew before I started all this?
This is the question that gets everybody. Don't worry, take your time.
Yeah. Okay. I don't even think I would have wanted to know anything. Like, even if it was like fire spinning killed me 10 years later or something like that. Like, there's been nothing bad that's ever happened, or, it's like obviously not everything is good. There's been lessons that's learned, like things happen. There's been drama everywhere. That always happens or whatever. But I mean, as far as like knowing anything before, like I don't think I would want to be totally honest. I think I would want to just like write it out exactly how it is.
Hey man, that's a great answer, honestly. Like I love that you've had such a good time doing this and that you've had so much success with it and I wish nothing but the best for you in your future. So, do you have like a 5 year goal with fire spinning and what you're doing now? Or are you just kind of going with the flow and focusing on school right now?
Yeah, I'm really more going with the flow and focusing on school. Like, don't get me wrong, it'd be cool to go on tour and, collaborate with other artists and collaborate with other flow artists and things like that, or musical artists or whatever. But it's just like, as unfortunate as it is, and I know you know this, just like being a freelance artist, it's like always just chasing that next thing. And I got into school while I was spinning fire because I never thought fire spinning. I never wanted fire spinning to be an end goal for me. I wanted it to be a hobby and something that I could really pursue and enjoy, and not have to worry about like, oh, where's my next like gig gonna be so I can make the next dollar or whatever. And so like my I guess what my 5 year goal is honestly is to really just get as stable as I can as far as like out of school and the job market and stuff like that. And after being stable, then I feel like I can just really dive back into like my projects and help other people and things like that, because that's something that I feel like I have an issue with now, is that like I want to do a lot of things, but I don't have the funds to do a lot of things or to fund a lot of things. And so I want to be able to do that, because I would love to fund my friends' projects who are full-time artists, who do this full-time, who are the people that I like learn from the most, and be like, hey, I know you want to do this crazy thing and build like a 70-foot stick. Here's 10 grand to do it or whatever. It's like that's like something that I think it'd be more powerful to the community and to like other people, is to like really be able to give back in a more like productive way. And I'm going to school for mechanical engineering, and I'm hoping that, along the ways somewhere I'll figure out some things to transfer this over to like prop making and fire spinning and, make something more efficient or somehow. But yeah, as far as the whole 5-year thing goes, it's more so just learning and training and just having fun and figuring out the next step to make something great.
Cool. And if people want to find you, hire you, or ask you questions, how can they do that? Where can they get you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Mikeyridesthefire. It's all one word, and it's Mikey. I'm also on Facebook at Mikey Adamski, fire performer and object manipulator. Adamski is Adamski. I'm not really on YouTube. I do have one. I don't know what it's called. You could probably just search Mikey Adamski Fire Performer on YouTube and it'll come up. I'm most active on Instagram. Yeah. So
awesome. Cool. Thank you, man. Thanks for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
All right, that was Mikey Adamski, aka Mikey Rides the Fire. Thank you so much, Mikey, for coming on the podcast. I loved hearing your story. I loved hearing how you got your start, where you've gone, the things you've done, and where you want to go. And I'm really stoked for your future as a fire spinner, as an educator, as somebody who's giving back to different communities. I'm really stoked to hear where you're at in a couple years from now. If you guys like this episode of Project Freelance, please give it a rating and some feedback, and I will send you a signed photo print. All you got to do is leave a rating, leave feedback, and then head over to Project Freelance on Instagram. Send me a DM with a screenshot of your feedback, and I will send you out a signed photo print of one of my photos. And if you guys want to see some of my photography or my video work, you can go to justtheletterk.com. Check out my stuff. I just put out a Dubai photography blog. I was recently in the Middle East visiting my father, and we stayed in Dubai for a couple days, which is where I got my start as a photographer and videographer. So I wanted to walk around the city, take some amazing photos, and so I just put out a blog with those photos and the stories up on justtheletterk.com/blog. And if you guys want to pick up a copy of my book, you can go to justtheletterk.com/no tracers. If you're into abandoned places, I explore them when I'm not freelancing, and I put a bunch of photos and stories into a book, and it is now on sale. If you guys want to get a signed copy, head to justtheletterk.com/no tracers. Once again, thank you so much for listening to Project Freelance. I love doing this podcast every single week. I love bringing these different guests on this podcast. And if you are a freelancer, and hey, if you want to chat with me on Project Freelance, hit me up at Project Freelance on Instagram or Project Freelance on Twitter. Character count didn't allow me to put Project Freelance, so it's Project Freelance. Yeah, all the links will be down in the description, don't worry. And if you guys need gear, if you need any photo or videography equipment, anything like that, there are a bunch of Amazon links down in the description. Check them out. If you guys use those links, I get a little bit of kickback. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks in advance. All right, I will talk to you guys next week for another episode of Project Freelance. Come back. You're not going to want to hear it. If you guys do want to get notified when new episodes come out, if you like this podcast, hit the subscribe button and you will be notified every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time when a new episode drops, just in time for your Monday morning commute. And as always, my name is Kay Anagonio. You are listening to Project Freelance. Stay strong, keep enduring, go out, and go create something.